Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have everyone here. Full room, fantastic. Excited to see everyone. So we're going to, Russ Camus again, for those of you who don't know me. We are in the third session of the PreZense seminar here at St. John's. And it's a pleasure to have everyone here today again. The first session we talked about resilience, which is a learned trait which requires two things, discipline and faith. You can work at it, you can develop it. We talked about how you do that. And just FYI, those videos, the first two sessions are online. And you can QR code that light bulb on the wall, and all the series will be available there, and we'll talk about that at the end. The second week, what did we talk about? Belief cycle. And the belief cycle was how we got all the beliefs that we have. Kind of how did they form up? How did we ask the universe what was true and what wasn't true, and how we believed it, what we believed. And I left the belief cycle up here, didn't erase it, so we could start with that and talk about our beliefs, create our thoughts, and they create the results in our lives. And does anyone remember any of the statistics we talked about when it came to thinking and the number of thoughts that we have going on in our heads and the colossal amount of noise that's going on in our minds?
Only 5% are new.
Yeah, only 5% are new. Isn't that amazing? So, and does anyone remember how many of these thoughts we're having today? Yeah, 50 to 75,000 thoughts a day. It's the average person. That's the range. I've seen lower numbers, but that seems to be the most popular number, right? And how many of those are the same as the prior day? 95% of them are the same as the day before, which means you're just seeking the same thoughts over and over and over again, right? And how many of them are negative? 80% of them are negative. They believe it's an evolutionary survival strategy. It still doesn't serve you, not in today's world. It's responsible for a lot of the issues we have. And how many of these thoughts are we controlling in our active mind? About 5%, right? So 95% of our life's being lived by our subconscious. So 95% of this is subconscious. 5% is autopilot. I use auto for subconscious. And does anyone know these thoughts that we have in our head, especially these, how many of these are ours or how many of these we got from other people? Almost all of these are from other people. Almost all. You could say 95 to 100%. We'll just put that on there. So, we concluded last time that our intellect has let us down. That we're using our thoughts to solve our problems, and that they're really not doing a good job for us. And we've got to find another level of intelligence on which to operate. And that's what we're going to do today. So this is the session you've been waiting for. The first two are actually foundational. This is actually where we get into the really exciting stuff that's going to change how you see your world and set you in a position that you can have more peace and more joy and more presence, which is hence the name of the whole seminar. So we're going to talk about mindfulness today. Mindfulness, minding the mind. Minding this stuff, because right now, for most people, we're in a prison of our own thoughts. This runs our lives, we don't run it. We're going to talk about how you get to that place where it doesn't. So mindfulness, what comes up for you guys when you hear the word mindfulness? Yeah, awareness is probably one of the top words that come to my mind when I think of being mindful. Right, other thoughts of being mindful?
Be present.
Present, in the moment? Yep. Intentionality, love it. Any other thoughts? So there's an esoteric movie, which I really like, but it's, everyone's different. Joe and the Volcano, Tom Hanks movie. It's one of my favorite quotes from that movie. Almost the whole world's asleep. Everyone you know, everyone you see, everybody you talk to. Only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of total, constant amazement. The world we live in is not wrong. The space we spend our time thinking in is not wrong. It's just incomplete. And by having this process run in the background of our heads, what happens is we live a limited life. We limit the possibilities for what could be achieved, the potentiality which could happen, and the advancement which we can achieve. And a lot of that comes from these beliefs, many of which, almost all of which are not ours. It also stifles our awareness and our understanding. This is rife with biases. So it keeps us from seeing what else could be. And we're going to flush all this out more. And it suppresses our willingness to accept other people and our inability to be compassionate. Because the fact is, we're making assumptions all over the place, but we don't know we're making them. There's nothing wrong with an assumption if you're aware of it. The problem is the lack of awareness, hence mindfulness. So the goal today is to talk about maturing from thinking to understanding. What's the difference between thinking and understanding? Anybody? I mean, isn't it the same thing? No, not at all. Thinking is the process of weighing things, considering options, solving problems, right? Understanding is knowing. And it's the knowing that we're seeking in mindfulness as a process. So we're going to shift the mindscape. Now, this is probably the weirdest thing about mindfulness is it's no thing. There's nothing to do, it's just something to see. But in seeing it, it's a huge thing, and it makes an enormous difference. So we're going to try to shift your perspective. And the perspective we're shifting, really nothing changed except how you're looking at it. You know, you're no longer in your front yard looking at it, now you're in your backyard looking at it. It's the same world. But the perspective matters. It matters quite a bit. Because the world beyond your habitual thought is much, much, much larger. I mentioned last time there's 170 billion people that have lived on this planet in history. And you're one of them. How much of that knowledge do you have? How right can you be in your own thinking? And how dare us as individuals to close off all other possibilities, which is what we do when we're here. So there's a lot more space and possibility. Everything's brighter and more vibrant in mindful space, and we're going to talk about waking up to what's going on. And I got a couple videos today I think that will help you get in this space. So we're going to go right after something we all see in society today, our identity. And the reality is that the beliefs we hold are not us. Now, where do we see in society where people use beliefs to kind of think that they confuse beliefs with themselves? We see it all over. Anyone want to guess? Well, as Buddha said, you can only lose what you cling to. So part of the problem is clinging. Why do people get so upset when their beliefs are challenged? We don't see this anywhere, do we? Right? Does anyone tell me why people get upset when their beliefs are challenged? Have you really thought about this? This is a really important question. It's the question behind the question. We just see the upset and we respond to the upset, but the question behind the question is, why?
Because they think it's their truth.
Right, exactly. And the key there was the possessive word there. They see that idea as being part of their spirit self. But it's an ego idea. We're going to flesh this out a lot more next week. So they see the idea and they take it to be themselves. And then if you take away something that's themselves, or you tell themselves that they're wrong, well, wouldn't they get upset? It's exactly what's happening. We see it all over. And so we want to be the change in the world. We have to step beyond this backward, unplanned, reactionary approach to thinking in the world. So people get frustrated when they're challenged, when their beliefs are challenged, because they take their thoughts as their identities. And and everyone does it. But it's false in the sense that this familiarity, the stability, the sense of control, none of it's true. Just because you think that this should be the way it is doesn't make this the way it is. And it certainly doesn't make it helpful to you. It can get in your way. So they see their thoughts as their identities and they feel personally attacked. They're threatened, right? So you go to a foreign country and someone comes up to you and they start talking at you. You don't understand the word they're saying. Now, if they're angry at you and you can't tell from their facial expressions, what's your reaction going to be? You're going to laugh, you're going to chuckle, you're going to well, this is interesting, what's going on? And you're going to take no thing from it, right? Why in that scenario would you take no thing from it? In this scenario, you would take something from it. Because you're attributing meaning to yourself. So our stories, these limited beliefs that we have from other people, they keep us from learning, they keep us from expanding, they keep us from growing. And this truth we hold, and I use the word truth loosely and in quotes, limits our connection possibility. It actually closes off in a little box of our truth and eliminates all other possibility outside of it, because we live in this teeny little matchbox, and yet the world's our oyster. The truth exists beyond these stories we tell ourselves. So the idea is to shift from facts to understanding, from ideas to knowing, and that requires a higher level of understanding.
I have a question.
Please.
So you say that our beliefs come from other people. Say I'm 7 years old and I'm asking my mom for something and she snaps at me, and then as a 7-year-old I interpret that as, oh, she doesn't love me, or
Exactly.
And then you carry that. But isn't it, you say it's from other people, but isn't it our interpretation of other people's actions?
Yeah, it is. So the beliefs can come from you asking the universe, is this true? But the reason you kind of find the answer fed back to you, because the world around you is affirming it. So many times if we look, well, is my mom mad at me? Now you're watching cartoons and you see moms being mad at their kid, or whatever. And then so the world does kind of feed into all those beliefs. It's very hard to come up with beliefs on your own at 7.
I agree with cherry pick to, like you said last week, about we look for evidence that supports our beliefs.
Right.
So when I see a cartoon then of a loving parent, I'm going to put more emphasis or weight on the one that reinforces
Right.
my belief.
My mom didn't love me as much as that cartoon character does, and now I've got a story around it.
Okay.
And I've never challenged it because it happened automatically. Yeah.
But this isn't saying that our thoughts are just crumbling sand, that everything we believe is nonsense. There's very strongly rooted things that we believe that are true and that are important to us. And getting upset is maybe a sign of emotional immaturity. It doesn't mean you're wrong just because somebody challenges you. You may be right. And
Right.
in fact, we would be mostly right if we're strongly held beliefs.
Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop you. You are very likely comfortable and right in the 5% of active thinking you do. It's the 95% that's happening that you're not thinking about that I'm going after. But you don't know it because you're...
You have to be necessarily automatically wrong. With whatever beliefs.
Well, yeah, and that's the issue. Is I'm not talking about wrong, I'm talking suboptimal. I'm talking that they're not serving you as well as alternative beliefs could serve you. So that's where we're going. We'll run with it a little bit. Active thinking is about turning off your autopilot. The desire to know your own soul will end all desires. Active thinking, and this is what Dan's actually referring to, so he's my straight man here. Do you guys remember the video from last week, where 2 weeks ago when we talked about active thinking? He called it the creative mind. Yeah, so you say, that 5%, your creative mind, when you're actually aware of you're in charge. Well, that goes by a lot of names. It goes by universal consciousness, awareness. It can go by a lot of different monikers, but the awake mind is what we're talking about. Now, this is the 5% of our life that I'm talking about, just so we're clear. So this is the turning off the autopilot, to think more actively. And what we're going to do throughout this session is we're going to learn more about conscious awareness, where we refocus our attention. See, we want to train ourselves to be more alert and awake. And the reason that's important is because if you got a pie chart, and I think it's time to talk about the 95, because this is going to come up several times today. There's the 5%. That's our creative mind, our active. And here's the 95% subconscious, asleep, autopilot of our thoughts and beliefs that run in the background. The idea is to spend more time here and let this grow. And later on, we're going to talk about the idea is to dampen down the dysfunctionality of this remainder. And actually, the process we're going to end today with is going to do both those. It just dovetails perfectly with what you're. I'm not into this. I'm not interested in having conversation around the stuff that you're actively aware of and controlling and have weighed out and have teased through and that you're managing your life with. Great. I'm talking about all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes when you're triggered, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're judging other people and you've never taken the time to realize you do the same thing. I'm taking the Christian full self-awareness, personal responsibility side, and that's where I'm going. That's what I want to come after. Because as much as anyone in this room thinks they're enlightened, your opportunity is much bigger than you think.
It's interesting, we're designed that way. We're designed in that pie chart. It's like we have to do something active to become more enlightened.
I know. It is very interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Why, I guess that's just.
some could say original sin, some could say evolution. We did talk about habits and the fact that they're patterns of belief. So a lot of this could just be things that we made automated to make our lives easier, so we don't have to think about it. Yeah, we short-circuit them. But it happens very young, and it happens before we can consciously do it, which is unfortunate. Anyway, so let's get back to this, to turn off autopilot. The goal is to be more attentive and more watchful. You'll notice more. So there's fun to this. This is actually a really exciting process. It's not a heavy process, because like I said, there's really nothing to do other than sit there. But you get an opportunity as we go through mindfulness to start befriending some thoughts, spending time with them, realizing that they're happening, tussling and playing with them, wrestling with them, asking yourself, hey, where'd they come from? Where did I see that in my life? Is it true? And then my favorite question is, does it serve me? Could I do something? Could I believe something else instead? So here's the thing. As we start to practice mindfulness, as you leave today, you're going to have a mindfulness homework. I'm going to give that to you. You're going to immediately start bumping into things you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's the first thing that popped in my mind when this happened. I never noticed that before. Or I can't believe that I'm thinking the thing that I dislike in other people. Or, that's interesting that the first direction I would go would be that direction. And just sit with it. You don't necessarily change what you're going to do, but you sit with it, you become aware. And this is the irony, and this has been shown again and again and again. You're going to see in yourself the thing you dislike in the world. So unfortunately, the early part of this process is kind of uncomfortable. The outside of the onion's kind of gooey in the sense that you're going to keep running into, I do the same thing I don't like. As a matter of fact, do you know that when you buy a new car, you see it everywhere? It's called attenuation. Well, the reason psychologists have shown this many, many times, we dislike something in someone else is because it's something we dislike about ourselves. We're all way more similar than you think. There's a lot of opportunity here. But it can be a fun process because the reality is, as you grow wise about yourself, that's one of the best ways to serve the world, instead of just bumping into things as they come and go. So I had run across something the other day which I thought was really interesting in the realm of starting to wake up and be compassionate. The quote was something like this: everyone and everything is another possible version of yourself. What if everyone that you ran into, you thought, that's just another possible version of myself? Had I been born, had I experienced, had I desired, had the fates struck me the right way, I could be that person. Woo, right? It's powerful stuff. The goal today, I want you all start thinking about becoming the observer. Love the stool. You used to be in charge of what happened in your head. You had space, you had time. We've been taught completely out of us as we've grown up. As we've learned to use thinking as the backbone for solving everything in our society, we no longer use intuition. We no longer use the knowing and the greater knowledge that's around us. And as a result, we've kind of lost our sovereignty. So the goal is to reclaim our sovereignty as the observer. So I think of a chair where you're sitting and watching your thoughts. Buddha once said, to conquer oneself is a greater task than conquering others. Yeah, you want to really accomplish something, impress people, impress me, go conquer yourself. You're going to be busy for a while. As a matter of fact, It's a lifetime practice. But you're the one who witnesses, and you can easily reclaim that spot. Humans spend so much time thinking, we come to believe we're our thoughts, hence we get angry when people challenge them. You're not your thoughts or your feelings. And this is so important. These are just shortcuts your brain uses to understand the world. So what's going on in your head, these words and ideas and impulses and images, none of them are thorough. None of them are complete. Many of them are contradictory. Many of them don't serve you. They've been around forever. You picked them up and they're not really true. If you sat down and analyzed them for 3 minutes or for 30 seconds, you say, oh, that's like, I'm not going to die because I'm afraid of this as if I'm going to die, and yet it's, I got a parking ticket, and yet I'm treating it like it's the end of the world. We do that all the time. So the reality is that there's all this stuff going on, but we have a consciousness. We're spirit. We're spirit having a human experience. That's the part of us I want to come back to. I don't want to degrade your thinking. I just want you to be in charge of your thinking. I don't want it to own you. And as you step into spirit, as you step into space beyond thoughts through this process, you're going to see and intuit and understand. This is the highest blessing you can give someone. Once you can resize and right-size the mental machinations that are going on in your head and put them in importance versus what's true, you're going to be in a better place, and you're going to reclaim your sovereignty. So this video is a good example of this conversation. If you need more volume, just raise your hand. I'll turn it up, otherwise we'll just run it. Except that's not going to work. Yeah, right? You're not wrong. Here, let me just start it over. Yeah, thanks for that. Yes.
The power of your thoughts comes from the power you give them. I'm going to say that again. The power of your thoughts comes from the power you give them. If you believe everything you think, you are a servant to your mind. If instead you see thoughts as merely intrusive thoughts with only the power you give them, you are the master. The real trouble starts when, instead of seeing our thoughts as only intrusive thoughts, we just unconsciously accept them as truth and fact. And the reason this is troublesome is that thoughts are very rarely facts. They're a blend of opinions, memories, interpretations, predictions, simply your brain's suggestions for understanding the world. And as the master, you get to decide whether or not you'll take on those suggestions. So to put this into practice, I want you to consciously work on noticing your thoughts, taking a look at them, deciding if you want to take them on as truth, and not judging yourself for having them. Simple, not easy, but simple and extremely powerful.
Wow. What'd you guys hear? Okay, so what was that, Pat? You're in control of your thoughts. What'd you say? Oh, I didn't hear Ken. Okay. What else did you guys hear? If you believe everything you think, you are a servant to your mind, was her quote. Why is that important? Because your brain has to use shortcuts to understand the world. It has to. There's too much going on. So what happens is it uses opinions and memories and interpretations and predictions, and they're all partial truths, and many of them usually aren't even applicable to the current situation, but they're just the brain's best guess at how to understand it. That's a fine process, as long as you own it. The problem is when that process owns you. And 95% of the time, the process is owning us. So what's the process? Drum roll. Being mindful, the practice of a lifetime. Thich Nhat Hanh said, meditation is not evasion, it's a sincere encounter with reality. I'm going to stop us right here before people start getting on meditation. Mindfulness is the practice. There's many, many ways you can practice mindfulness. Meditation is just one of them. So the goal here is to witness your thoughts, your emotions, and your ideations. And this can happen through reflection, through prayer, through study, through journaling, through meditation, through visualization. There's a variety of techniques. And it can happen quietly, which early on will be easiest for you if you set a little time aside to do this. But you can do awareness while you're doing things. You can practice presence when you're driving your car. You can practice flow when you're painting a wall. You can do mindfulness, this practice, anywhere, anytime. What is the practice? It's super simple. Anyone here meditated before? Okay, this is going to be, you're going to recognize this right off. The 4 steps to mindfulness, you got to notice what thought is in your head. What emotion are you dealing with? Notice it. Notice it, then accept it. That's interesting. Or thank you, mind, but we're meditating now. Then you let it go. No judgment. You don't tussle with it. You don't use it. You don't write it down. And you return to the present moment and you wait for the next thought. Literally the entire practice. Now, is it easy? Is it hard? We actually don't use those terms when we practice mindfulness. The practice is to see how many times you can catch a thought and come back to now. It's just like a push-up. So if I had you guys do push-ups right now, how many could you do? Anyone? 2, 1. I got some zeros. 3. Do I hear 4? But if you did a couple 4 or 5, 10 push-ups today, and you did that every day for a few weeks, how many push-ups could you do then? A lot more, right? Right. This is exactly the same process. Early on, you're going to run into the thought, you're going to come back to now, and but over time, you're going to immediately find that when you're in a grocery store, oh my gosh, I'm coming back to now. I'm coming back to my thoughts. I'm noticing my thoughts. I'm starting to get in touch with this noise that's going on behind the scenes. And then you start saying things like, oh, not right now, or that doesn't serve me today, or that's garbage. Why am I even thinking that? Or I'm going to deal with that later. I'm not going to have that thought 10 more times today. That's tomorrow's problem. Today's got enough troubles for itself. So this process, as you do it, starts to snowball, and unfortunately what happens is I also start to run out of words in this process because I'm using thinking to explain a process that's above thinking. So I'm always going to be deficient in my ability to describe it, and dependent on the group to go ahead and practice and find for yourself. Learn it for yourself.
I have a question about emotion. So it's obvious to me that like if you're feeling anxious, there's like a flag going up to notice what you're thinking or angry. But it seems too that it could be good emotions could also be fueling some of these not like
Yeah.
you know, like I got
Yeah.
this big powerful job. Well, that's fueling this ego.
Pride,
So
yep.
it's not just the negative emotions,
Yep.
but also notice the flag going up for the positive.
It's an excellent point. It's actually on a slide coming up. So, yeah, thank you. So even short practices make a difference. Studies have shown 10 minutes a day make an enormous difference. They rewire your brain. They help people be more centered. They're effective for, and a lot of depression comes from processing thoughts in ways that are not optimal. So just this shift also has significant improvements in mental illness, depression, all sorts of things. So it's a powerful practice. And this attention is life. As a matter of fact, I'd argue when you're asleep, you're actually not living your life. You're alive, but you're not living. You're making CO2, which will soon be illegal, but no, just kidding. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we do 1 2-minute practice? Now, normally, I would not have you keep track of the number of times that you're coming back, but so you got a piece of paper in front of you, you can just make a little dot. We're going to take 2 minutes, and I want you to use this process. I just want you to notice what thought comes in your head, and when you have a thought, accept it, let it go. You can put a dot down on your paper, come back to now, and just be still. We'll do it for 2 minutes. I'm going to see how it comes up for you, because if you've never done it before, it's a practice, it's a fun little practice. And you can see how many dots you have. You don't have to share it. I know some people are going to be like, dink, 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 dink. That's okay. It's okay. We want to just dink quietly. That's all I ask, okay? You guys ready? We'll go ahead and do 2 minutes. How was that for you? It was relaxing for me, and I was up here doing it, so. Does it give you a sense of presence? Quiet, peace? Anyone disturbed by the number of thoughts they had? Yeah. It's just an opportunity. There's no bad meditation. There's no bad mindfulness practice. Okay. Anything come up for anyone? Anyone notice anything?
Is mindfulness different?
Please, that's fine.
I'm sorry, Natalie.
It's all right.
I was just gonna say, I felt the need to label, like I would feel,
Yeah.
and I felt the need to label, like,
Yeah.
this is how I feel about it, or like, I felt the need to engage with it.
Right.
Or just letting.
That's wonderful. So what I would encourage for you as part of your mindfulness practice would be to journal. So do this process, put a couple down, and then separately journal those ideas, because clearly there's stuff there you want to bring out of here back up to here.
What do you mean by engage with it? Like, just maybe that's
Like put an emotion on it, or, okay, well, I'm gonna have to circle back to this because I have to solve this problem, so I'm gonna let it go for now, and then I need to come back, or
Yeah.
if I feel X about it before I can let it go, instead of just acknowledging that this is the thought that I had and moving on to the next one.
There's no wrong practice. That's interesting, my friend. One of the practices, so we have a work group, and we'll have a work group after this where people who are interested to do this, we'll do it more regularly. But one of the things we did was we defined the 4 general types of places your mind goes. And one of the meditations we did was we would categorize which one we were at, and that would help us come back to now. Because actually knowing what it is lets you just let it go easier. So we would do some of that work. So if that works for you, that's great. Now, you were asking something about mindfulness?
I was wondering, like, what is the difference between, like, practicing gratitude and mindfulness?
They're highly related.
Yeah, okay.
They're highly related. Gratitude would be being mindful of the good side and the appreciation. Because we're wired, 80% of our thoughts are negative. Gratitude goes right after this and tries to rewire this so that this is an 80, this is 70, this is 60. That's what that does.
Yeah.
Right. Good. So your homework between now and next week is do this a couple times. Take 10 minutes a day. Even if you don't have time, do it while you're driving your car. Please keep your eyes open. I've had this conversation with folks. Keep your eyes open, but just let your thoughts go. Shut the radio off. Just let your thoughts go. And come back to now. Feel the steering wheel. What temperature is the air in the car? You know, what does the seat feel like? Keep coming back to that moment and drive to work that way. You could meditate twice a day, just going back and forth to work. It's great practice. So you're going to do this. You're going to accept your thought. You're going to let it go. You're going to come back to now. A lot of people anchor in the breath. I had mentioned that afterwards. They just listen to their breath and wait for a thought to come. Then they come back to their breath. I actually use sound, but there's no right or wrong way. Start with your breath. That's the most popular, and most people, and it goes with you everywhere you are. So it's easy that way. Okay, now the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to feel like you're doing this wrong. Now, I can't say this enough time. There's no bad practices. There's also no good practices. There's just practice, okay? Practice is the key. It's not how fast you get there, it's that you're moving there at all, because 99% of the population is not doing this work. They're trapped in this cycle, and they're not going to get out of it. And I want for all of you a higher level, a higher state of living. And so this next video is going to drive home this point.
There are millions of people out there who are interested in meditation or aware of its benefits, but they're not doing it. They have fallen prey to this pernicious misconception that in order to meditate, you need to clear your mind. Clearing your mind is impossible unless you're enlightened or you're dead. The goal of meditation is to get familiar with how wild the mind is so that it doesn't own you as much. So in the moment where you sit and try to focus on your breath, and then you inevitably notice that you're thinking about what's for lunch, many people tell themselves, oh, I'm failing at this, I can't do it. But actually, that moment is proof that you're doing it right. What you want over and over and over again is to have a collision with the voice in your head, your inner narrator, so that you don't act out all the shitty ideas that your narrator is serving up to you all day long. And that's a superpower. That's mindfulness.
That's mindfulness. That collision with your thinking is the process. If that's happening, you're doing it right. And over time, and this is one of the most fascinating things to me in this process, is mindfulness does both ends of this circle at the same time. It expands the percent of time that we're consciously aware through practice, and it reduces the problems we have down here, because the quality, let's say the quality of this on a scale from 1 to 10 is 20%. I'm pretty sure that sounds about right. So let's say the quality of this is 20%. Mindfulness will increase the quality over time. So you won't have as much suboptimal. You won't have as much unacceptable. You won't have as much. So what will happen is the quality of this, when you spend time in here, won't be so bad. So what will happen is the quality will go up over time. So as you practice, your subconscious will, actually the stuff in your head that you're not thinking will improve. So mindfulness does both sides. Because you're drawing stuff out of here, you're processing it, and it's falling back in here, but now it's better. You're drawing stuff out of here, you're processing it, and it's falling back in here, but now it's better. Now you're choosing these, and they're dropping back in here, and over time, you see enough of these enough times that don't serve you, they fall away. You actually don't have to do anything, you just stop allowing it because it just doesn't help you. It's a passive, active process. Henry.
Is the quality increasing because of dilution or because it's increasing?
I don't think it's dilution as much as the stuff that's in here is getting replaced with stuff that's better. I think that would be the easiest way to say it. I think over time you're just not going to listen to your mother in your head about a certain topic, which was ridiculous and still there. And now you see it 5 or 6 times, and you're like, all right, Mom, I love you, you can have a place, but you no longer get to make this decision. And then all of a sudden it's still there, but now it's teeny, and it's not having an impact anymore. Makes more space for other things. This awakened that I'm referring to is a better way to live. Ram Dass said once, our journey is about being more deeply involved with life and less attached to it. So this is conscious awareness that we're trying to expand. And it will right-size the importance of the various machinations going on in your head. But most importantly, it reestablishes your control in your life, your innate power. You were born with the right and the ability to do this. We just don't focus on it. We don't teach it. We don't do anything with it in a society. I spent the last 15 years with 5,000 high school and college kids trying to get them to see this stuff early so that they don't have to live the next 30 years without ever getting taught some of these basic skills. This stuff isn't new either, which is what's so frustrating about it, but yet we keep falling back into this condition that we, wind up with our thoughts. And it connects us, this entire process connects us with Source. And I say this, I mean it seriously. Do this long enough and come back to me and tell me you're not spending more time with God, with presence, with consciousness, with the universal spirit, whichever you want to say it. When you get you out of the way, there's more space for all. And I mean that seriously. It's a very powerful form of prayer, to be silent, to have time where your brain isn't running you. It's a very peaceful place. And that's why when I started this series, I talked about more peace, more joy, more love in your life. Yeah, that's all universal God construct. And it'll lead to some really powerful things. You're going to be smarter. Believe it or not, you're way smarter when you're not just relying on your thoughts. There's a knowing beyond your thoughts. When you start to sit in that space, you're smarter. Some of your maladies are going to fall away. Your greater acceptance and compassion to the world around you because you're going to realize who you are. Sorry, truth is you've got a lot of things you don't like in the world, but it does open up enormous opportunities for your life. Yeah. The current moment, someone said this earlier, is the only reality there is. You can't live in the past, you can't live in the future, and yet we live in our minds in this noisy place and not so sure that that's actually living. When you're thinking, you're one step behind the action. You're actually not in the moment. Things to think about. And perfectly honest, this is the narrow gate. If you walk this way, you're going to walk a life that other people don't walk, because in the end, the next week when we get together, we're going to talk about one thing you have to do this. And we're going to talk about ego next week. We're going to talk about what has to happen with your ego stories and your ego self and for this to work. But don't worry, you're going to run right into that between now and next week when you do your practices. And you're going to be running into it nonstop. But that's why now it's called the present. It's a gift. We can spend a little bit more time there. So another good video.
The superpower you're after is to realize that virtually all of your psychological suffering, and actually arguably virtually all of your physical suffering, is a matter of being lost in thought. It's a matter of thinking without knowing that you're thinking. And what mindfulness does, and really any technique of meditation ultimately should do, is teach you to break the spell of being lost in thought and to notice a thought as a thought. Until you learn how to meditate or do something like meditation, you're just helplessly thinking every moment of your life. You're having a conversation with yourself. You're having content, whether it's imagistic or linguistic, pour forth into consciousness every moment, and so incessantly that you don't even notice it. It's just white noise. And not only does it completely color your experience moment to moment. So like if they're angry thoughts, you're angry. If they're depressed thoughts, you're depressed. If they're sad, you're sad. So you become your thoughts, but you also feel identified. You feel that you are the thinker of your thoughts. You feel like a self.
What come up for you when you heard that? I like the way it closed. You think you're a thinker, you think you're a separate self. Because there's stories in there you have about yourself and who you are. And that story is part of the noise. And leads us right into next week's thoughts. Any other thoughts about that video? I love these. I think they really drive home what mindfulness is and why it's important. How you doing?
This thinking and all this information you give us, the thoughts, the beliefs, how we think, where it comes from. What about cultural differences in the world and people? People are much the same physically, but their minds are quite different. Are there different cultures that don't experience as much trouble with thoughts?
Yes, there are, actually. Actually, some of the more indigenous cultures where they don't have the societies we've created, yeah, they don't have as much issue. But behind all this, there's a universal humanness to this issue. It's like people are very similar.
Maybe a tribe in the middle of Africa might not have as much trouble with life and happiness.
Well, that's actually shown, yeah. A lot of them don't. Yeah.
We are society in our electronics and our Western culture more trouble.
Yeah. There's a joke, if you want to make someone unhappy, give them more options. We live in the top 1% of the world's wealth here in the United States. We have more options than anyone else in the world.
Don't go to Cheesecake Factory.
And there's that. Excellent question, thank you. So why is this important? When you start to do this process, you're going to just find you're more peaceful. And you're more present, you're more accepting, and you have more freedom, and there's more space. I can't explain how the space gets bigger, but everything just gets bigger and freer and brighter. It's just part of the process. Aristotle reminds us that if you've overcome your fears, then you're truly free. All our issues really stem from fearful thinking, which was that whole negativity piece we were talking about, or blessing. You're going against the fear. As I mentioned previously, it's the #1 command in the Bible. Depending on translation, between 85 and 115 times, fear not is in the Bible. And why is that important? Because we habitually fear. We've created perceptions and addictions and in our thinking that are fearful. And they get in the way of our believing better outcomes and living in ways that are more positive. The process is really powerful. It changes the heart. It lets you understand that living and being alive aren't the same thing. As I mentioned, fear is a fraud. Fear is just a scary way of viewing things. That's all it is. Evil is all around you, but as you do this process, you can see it doesn't have as much bark. It's more bark and not as much bite. You get to make this, you get to choose. And you always have. Look, your future path's never been clear, so maybe we'll just stop pretending it is and fighting and insisting it should be. That'll happen in this process. You realize every outcome is valuable, just like the exercise we did, worst day exercise. Would you get rid of your worst day if it didn't make you who you are? Every day, every experience is valuable. Every adversity, and this was your comment earlier, can be met with equanimity, that peaceful presence. And so her point was earlier was, well, isn't extreme joy also problematic? Yes. When we did the belief cycle, any emotion that swings, you should sit with it. When you win the lotto, you should sit with it, realizing that tomorrow's not going to be a lotto winning day. And when someone you love in your life dies, you should sit with it and remember that tomorrow that person is either in a better place or someone's not going to die the next day. Either way, life tends to average out, but we tend to live in the highs and lows, and those emotions are always targets to say we're believing something that's not serving us. And that's what we talked about last week. Emotions are always a gateway that our beliefs aren't serving us, and I don't just mean negative emotions. Positives can also mean, if you keep going for that next job so you can hit for that next promotion and you need that next feeling that you're worthy, well then those positive emotions aren't serving you. Life will be difficult, but it's never unbearable. I have a joke. What's unbearable is being at work at 10 a.m. and wanting to, being at work at 10 a.m. and wanting to be off work at 6. That's unbearable. Unbearable is being in Buffalo and wanting to be in the Caribbean in the middle of the winter, right? But unbearable, more seriously, is living life angry, frustrated, unhappy, discontent. That's unbearable, right? Well, you don't have to bear it. Because as you awaken, there'll be less of it. It's going to fall away. And this is where a calm and a joy can prevail. And death, to be honest with you, becomes a curiosity in this process, not something you're really worried about. Because as you fall to peace, as you become peaceful in this process, you become more centered around the whole piece. Look, happiness has always been your natural state. It always has been. People think you can achieve happiness by doing something. It's completely backwards. Think of happiness as the sun, okay? And your thoughts and your emotions and your ideations are the clouds, okay? And if you've got a lot of thoughts and they're all the time, how much sun's getting through? So you not have much happiness, right? But as you become mindful, you got fewer clouds. So that means you have fewer storms. The storms that show up in your life don't last as long. And now you got fewer clouds, so you got more sunshine more often, right? You get more warmer days. That's literally how happiness works. It's the background, and we keep putting stuff in between us and happiness. You could easily use God as happiness in this one. And your thoughts and your joys and your thoughts, your emotions, your ideations are the clouds. This is the process to have fewer of them.
I have a question.
Yes.
So sometimes those thoughts, those ideas can be protective, right? Like if I'm downtown, I notice the more different somebody is than I feel at risk. Like somebody who's younger, a man, compared to if I see an older woman.
Yes.
In an elevator or something. So that's just moving that thought into the conscious and evaluating.
Right. Stay safe, absolutely. But own that there may be a piece of that that's unfair. If you do both those things, I think you're doing the mindfulness piece.
I look at this and I can't do it without thinking of it in biblical terms, because if and you know this as well as anybody, if it doesn't stand up that way, it's not
right.
Stand up. And there's a Greek word in the Bible, I don't forget what it is, that's about 10% of the time it's translated happy. Same word. The other 90% is blessed.
Yeah.
So that's the idea behind it.
Yeah. Kaylee's right on it. Yeah.
And Aristotle spoke, maybe Jesus stole it from him, but or as Paul said, may your heart's mind surpass all. There's a peace that surpasses all understanding. That's the same.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think this process will get you to that peace that surpasses all understanding, and you're going to start to see that these things all start to dovetail. If you go far enough out in psychology, you know what you run into? God. If you go far enough out in philosophy, you know what you run into? God. If you go far enough in your religion, you know what in our spiritual journey, you know what you run into? Do you know that they're all the same because they have to be? Because they all are the same concept. We use different words for them, but they're very related. They're very similar. Yes, the peace that surpasses all understanding. If you get you out of the way, this made up you, which we're going to spend great time on next week, there's going to be a lot more room for God. Final slide. Why now? Well, look around, everyone. Is the harvest not plentiful in the world around us? And you have to be the change that we need, right? So Lao Tzu said, those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know. We see all of the latter. We see all sorts of people who don't know speaking. We hear that all the time, right? It's called media. But what about this first part? What about these people who know and don't speak? Why? Why would they do that? They being selfish? Anyone want to guess why? There's 2 reasons. It's related. Jesse. That's it, yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So part of it is that we're using words to explain something which isn't word-based, so there's a huge opportunity for misunderstanding. And the second is lots of people aren't interested. You guys all self-selected. Usually only about 10% of people are interested in this work, which is ironic because it will benefit everyone. I've never seen someone who sees it who doesn't enjoy it. They just think that they don't. So these teachings are not mine. I did not make them up, although I did take 3-year sabbatical to get into, figure out why. After all my years of study, I was still not happy, and this is how I ended up here, which was I realized that I was going about it the wrong way. I was still trying to self-actualize and achieve instead of self-transcend. But for a future session. Look, this story's been told by philosophers, by poets, ancients, mystics, sages, prophets, and spiritual leaders, and yet the human condition remains unchanged. Is there not more vitriol, unhappiness, anxiety, and mental illness than ever? Look, it starts with us. We've got to be the ones that raise the collective consciousness, and this happens internally. Look, we are the change the world needs. We're the change the world needs. That's why we're doing a seminar. So we're going to bang into ego next week. But I will tell you that when I think about where the opportunity lies in your life, it's very much similar to this. The opportunity does not lie outside of you. I mean, go ahead and go to the food kitchen and go ahead and be kind in the world around you, but the real opportunity for change in your life, the biggest opportunity is inside. So this circle works perfectly the same. The inside opportunity is about 95, and the outside opportunity is about 5. Your homework, 10 minutes a day. It's fine if you're driving your car. Keep your eyes open. Between now and next week, and we're going to talk about ego. Between now and then, you guys can open that box if you want. There's extra books because we ran out last week. And also, the QR code on the wall will now let you scan that light bulb. You can scan it, and all the seminars, the videoed seminars that you're watching today, including this one, are on that link. So they're all on YouTube. Do me a favor. Be a blessing to someone else. And if you know anyone who'd enjoy this material, go out on those links and forward those YouTube, because the work is for this group, but the work would serve a lot of other folks. So if you got anyone you want to forward them to, those are the links, and you can just start shooting them to friends and see if anybody else gets some benefit out of them, because that's what it's all about. It's not about anything else other than making the world a better place. Any questions or comments before we wrap up? Ego next week. It even gets better. I know it's hard to believe, but next week's even better. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you.